Welcome to the Glazier Nation Podcast, where we uncover the best stories and the best practices of the glass and glazing industry. Whether you're a seasoned vet or just starting out your journey, this show's a great place for entertainment and a deeper understanding of our industry. I'm your host, John Spelman, and I'm truly honored to take you beyond the glass. My guest this week is Tim Finley, founder of TFIN Building Solutions. Easiest way to explain TFIN Building Solutions is that Tim is an independent rep. Maybe generally speaking, but an independent rep is self-employed and sells products on behalf of multiple companies. I tried my best to make this the youth sports podcast that the glass and glazing industry didn't know they needed, but we also talked about how the whole independent rep thing works and a lot about sales in general. Quick side note, we're going to be running some March Madness glazing related content on social media. If you don't follow us to check that out, make sure you do at Glazier Nation Podcast. I had a blast chatting with Tim, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. The Glazier Nation Podcast is sponsored by Glazier Nation. You can check out all their offerings at glaziernation.com. If you're interested in sponsoring the podcast or other marketing opportunities, go to glaziernation.com/marketing. And if you have questions for me or you know someone that would make a great guest for the show, you can contact us on any of our social medias at Glazier Nation Podcast. So that's 37 podcasts now. So if you go to the first one that I did, the Glazing Guru, it's awful. Just,
Aren't you always your worst critic, though?
well, I mean, and that's going to lead me into probably the thing I want to talk about the most is youth sports here. But this is something that I tell these kids constantly is whenever you start something new, you look like a fool.
Yeah.
We set them up to try some sort of drill or something, and you hear 3 or 4 of them, I suck at this. And I'm like, well, yeah, but.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because what age group are you? You said before it's like a 6-year-old, right?
I've got a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, and
Okay.
they can often be on the same team, but this spring they're in the age gap where they're in 2 different levels.
Sure.
So I've got up to 11-year-olds on the 8-year-olds team, and I've got down to 5-year-olds on the 6-year-old team.
Yeah. And so my boys are 2 years apart. So unfortunately, I don't, just with the grade in between them, they'll never end up by age-wise on the same team, But you see the personalities come out or build up, and the confidence or lack thereof in youth sports. It's fun to be a part of. It's something that I know you have a passion for.
Yeah, I had no clue before kids that I was going to be the super involved, coaching multiple teams on the board of the local little league. But yeah, it's fun, and I think it's given an opportunity to bond with my boys.
Yeah,
but also some other kids, and someone that's kind of taught me a little bit about coaching told me one time. He goes, some of these boys, the hour they spend with you that week is the best hour of their week, and that really stuck with me. That was pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And so we take
find yourself.
What?
I said, do you find yourself having to temper your expectations, right? You could have the best game plan drawn up for an 8-year-old's practice. And when you get there, within the first 30 seconds, you realize that most of the practice is going to be dedicated to tying shoes and telling them to listen.
Okay. So a huge strategy of mine is getting as many helpers as I can.
Yep.
So I think that enables me to at least get close to the idea of what the practice is going to look like.
Uh-huh.
We'll do kind of we'll warm the kids up, right? Especially now. I know you'll laugh at this, but practice last night was 55 degrees, and all the moms are bundled up with jackets and blankets.
Right.
So get the boys warmed up, and then we'll usually break into stations. So if you've got 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, you only have 3 of them at a time, right?
Yeah.
So I think that helps.
Yeah, preparation's key. Preparation and the ability to talk to that age group, I think, is key.
The language that they can understand, right? So
Yep.
On the 8-year-olds team, the age is 8 to 11, and one of the helper coaches I have, I think, is used to older boys. He has an older son.
Okay.
And he was telling a kid something, and everything he was telling him was correct, but the kid wasn't getting it. And then I think maybe because I'm just used to like, I'm more in that pocket of the younger boys than he is right now. He's past that a little bit. You know, I came in and said basically the same stuff, but just in different words. And
a way they could understand it. We had that. So I coach youth football, and I coached fourth and what was it? Yeah, it would have been fourth and fifth grade this year, or third and fourth grade this year. And the idea that we were talking to them in a way they could understand. One of the coaches, he's a good friend of mine, and he coaches at a varsity level, so he's used to speaking in a different way. He was using words that you could tell, you know, just like articulate or, you know, all these different large words that the boys were just lost at. And so it's a lot of it has to do with how you talk to them.
I think that's relevant to the glazing industry or probably almost any industry too, right? Like I try to explain to my customers a lot, like they have their own language. And then when they send us something, you know, we interpret it, right? Yeah. And then we send it back in our language. And this is right. You can probably relate to this as a sales rep, and we'll get into all this. We'll get back into the glazing industry here, even though this is probably going to be the youth podcast, the youth sports podcast that the glazing industry didn't know they needed.
Right.
As a sales rep, that's the opportunity for that customer to find those mistakes, right? As opposed to finding them.
I would think it's anything, you know, in sales, you have to adapt to your audience. And again, it's a lot of vernacular of what do you call it versus how do we see it, and how can we agree that we're saying and seeing the same things.
Yeah, different language you would use for a glazing contractor versus an architect.
Right, absolutely. We tend to see, and even across this installer base and at an architectural level, depending upon the audience, some are more technical than they are visual. Yeah. And it's just in today's environment where it's mostly digital, be it email or Zoom, you know, you're pulling up drawings in real time and all of that. You got to be prepared and adapt to whatever the scenario is.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I can usually tell within 30 seconds of talking to an architect, you know, which type of language do I need to use, right? Like, do we need to break it down like they know nothing? And this is no fault of the architect. The architect needs to know 36 different spec sections, right?
Right.
I don't expect them to know granular levels of storefront details.
Right.
But sometimes you'll run into one that knows a little bit more, and you know you can kind of elevate that conversation, right?
Yeah, and you also have to take into account: are you going there to promote a product, or are you going there to answer project specific and get into project specific details, right? And some of those conversations may be more technical at whatever level you're in to talk about.
Yeah, so let's hop into some of that. The modern day sales rep. The modern day sales rep, what is the value that they're bringing someone when that someone can get a lot of that information online easily, right?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that, and it's something that I talk about a lot, is the fact that a sales rep needs to be technical enough to move the conversation and the project requests further. The bigger part of that is that they have to give access to the team that's behind them. And a lot of these manufacturers have extremely intelligent and bright individuals that know their specific product inside and out, but not every customer would have their direct line. And so I always look at it as like us as sales consultants, you know, we're kind of the gatekeeper and or the orchestrator to, all right, we've got this going on. We need to know who to pull in at the right time and kind of and make sure that they're using their time wisely, but also adding value to the customer that's asking for it. And so kind of back to being a sales rep, you've got to, in what we were just talking about, you got to be able to adapt to your audience and the requests at hand. And I see it, and you probably do as well, is that there is a lot of information available. We live in a digital world. And I think at at the technical level, so be it like a consultant, an architect or engineer, I see the first introduction to the product is typically that they go out and research it on their own via the web, right? Go to the website, get the details, and they either take that and issue it, or they have questions and they inquire. Very seldom, and I don't know if you see this, but for the manufacturers that I rep, every single website has find a rep, and they would contact you directly. That's not the case. They fill out, or they want, most people, when they're searching for something, if they have a question, they want instant access to that. So it typically goes to the manufacturer, and then they push that lead out or that question out to the field. But it's all about information exchange, is how quick you can get it and help them in the moment of what they're doing.
Yeah, I think the speed of a response, I think, can get you pretty far. But you tell me what you think of this. I thought pretty firmly post-COVID, during COVID, that the Zoom boom was kind of here to stay, right? And I kind of thought we were all going digital. We were all just going to do Zoom meetings. And I don't know if I'm part boomer, but like I don't like that anymore. I prefer, and I was on board. I was like the guy that was like, yeah, we're doing this. Everything's digital. Yeah. I'm the digital guy.
Right.
Now I don't like that. And now I find, like, myself, I want to get a human. And it's the first thing when I get on a website is I want to see if I can get a human that's just going to answer my question.
Right. And I've seen doors opening up to that more and more. A lot, like kind of mid last summer, it felt like a lot more meetings were going to happen in person, or if we could stop by. I think, the quick answer, the quick ability to hop on Teams or Zoom or whatever it is always going to be there now because of the hybrid remote scenario where they're not always in the office and we're not going to their homes. But humans crave human interaction, I believe. And some people are more visual, some people are more in person, whatever it may be. I think, I certainly don't want to be stuck in a digital world of being in my office on a screen like this. I want to go out and have that human interaction.
Yeah, I went completely full circle. I thought, yeah, this is it. I'm down with this. I like this. I can operate from my base here. And I'm with you that specifically architects that had gone full kind of Teams, Zoom, they've come around that they're requesting the in-person meetings, or I'm almost like pushing for that instead of the Zoom, right? Like if they bring up Zoom, hey, I could just come by your office tomorrow, kind of thing.
Right. I think you have to ask for it, certainly. And I think, from an architectural promotion or an architectural approach standpoint, by nature, it seems to be more of an introverted environment. So the idea might be it's easier to meet virtually.
Yeah.
But that said, I think there's also an information exchange in that relationship that a lot of folks are realizing, or a lot of people are realizing. They need resources. They need someone in like the Division 8 to be their go-to person, whether it's, so whether it's just in store, in metal side of things or just in glass side of things. In my case, I kind of cover a larger portfolio, but in the same regard, if there's anything around glass and glazing that they have questions, I want them to just be comfortable to ask me. I'm not pushing a given product. I'm helping them understand the application and where it can go. And I think we've all that have been in these specific to glass and glazing sales that have made a career of it are that go-to person for a lot of people, because we know enough to be dangerous, and some of us consider ourselves experts, but the architects that rely on us are pretty successful in their design and getting the value that the client deserves.
When I was a glazing contractor, any sales rep that had any whiff of a scent of trying to push or sell was just super unattractive to me. So when I went to sales, it was a pretty high priority of mine to not do that.
Yeah.
And I find that sales, maybe I'm misguided here, but I find that sales are more frequent and less stressful when it's based on your relationship and you providing the answers that people need. And like, that's where I go when I am looking for a service or a product, like in my area. Like I want to work with the guy, or I want to hire the guy that I've met that has answered a question for me or helped me in some situation. That's where I go, even if it's not the low price, right?
Right. I think, we're not going to convince people that they need to, the application is going to call for the product, right? So like for example, in my portfolio with skylights or dynamic glass, I can't convince somebody that they need to put a skylight in their monumental entrance, right? I mean, I can, and I can talk about the beauty of it, but at the end of the day, what's
it gonna take you to get into the skylight today?
Yeah. And so that idea of pushing a design concept where it doesn't fit is not my approach. I follow along and listen. They've got a desire to add something of value in this area, and I could help in making those choices. And then from there, it's really up to them. The idea of trying to push for a sale, you can feel it pretty quickly. And no offense to anyone that's in sales, but I think that pushiness comes from a little less sophisticated product offering, meaning our products like yours, with your YKK storefront and curtain wall glazing systems, advanced glass systems, it comes with the technical aptitude that you can't push people into it. And if you try, you're pushing on a rope.
Yeah. I mean, there's maybe some niche scenarios where can we upsell something that maybe the building doesn't need? Sure, maybe, yeah, but I'd say that's pretty rare. And if I'm trying to guide anything, it's usually to guide something that I have that I know the competition doesn't. Like that's more where you're, I don't think manipulating is the correct word, but maybe guiding,
advocating.
Yeah, but that's more just because it's like the double sale process, right? Like the architect, if they're using you as basis of design and they're trusting you, they want to work with you.
Right.
So it's almost like you have to work together to then get that second sell at bid time.
Correct. And we all know that the specification of proprietary versus non-proprietary, but there are ways within whatever product offering.
Nothing dubious. It's stuff. Let me rephrase. It's stuff that the competition can do, but maybe they don't do it as well, or it costs them more. That
correct. Yep, you got to work to your advantages, right?
Yeah. No one's working in the glass and glazing industry like pro bono.
No.
We can enjoy what we do, but everybody's out to make a dollar, and I think it's pretty insane to assume that someone isn't.
Right.
Tim, you are an independent rep, and 18 minutes into the show, that's probably a good time to address that. But it'll be in the opener too. I do a whole little introduction for you. Don't worry about that. But as an independent, anyone that maybe doesn't know that term, how does that differ from a company rep like myself?
Sure. So I am a manufacturer's independent rep, meaning I'm a sales agent for a given manufacturer in a defined territory, but it's on a contract basis. I'm not a full-time W-2 employee where we would get benefits, salary, things like that. We get paid upon sale of a project and the completion of payment. So we're basically a commissioned sales agency for that manufacturer.
I mean, people can probably connect the dots on the pros and cons, but were you a company rep prior?
I was. All of my career, I've been a company person, direct, and all in kind of commercial glass fabrication. And the benefits of being a company employee is having that support system. You certainly have your benefits, your comp plan in terms of salary, bonus, commission, whatever, that's to the individual and to the company, but you have that safety net of being a direct employee. Whereas as an independent, legally we love each other 30 days at a time. I've got a contract for a year, but either of us can terminate it within 30 days. So there's really no guarantee that, and who's to say, and this goes for company versus independent, who's to say we build the market here and it seems like it would be more beneficial to put a direct salesperson on maybe a more company favorable comp plan.
Yeah.
And so I think there's certainly trade-offs to both. Speaking from my experience, both are good. It's really to the individual as to, what you're comfortable with. There's a lot more risk as an independent rep, of course, because we only get paid on what we sell, and we're only as good as the manufacturers we work with. And there's one key caveat to that, is that as an independent, if that manufacturer isn't used to selling through those channels and embracing an independent rep as like a direct extension of their company and their sales force, your position of influence and to be able to advocate on behalf of your customer it diminishes. And that is a kind of bringing it back full circle. It's a lot of what the value of a rep is that they know what the company's capable of. They know what the customer wants, and trying to find that balance between the two. If you're an independent and you're with a company that isn't used to sell, might not look at an independent as a direct extension of their company.
Yeah.
Your ability to influence is not there, and it can become challenging.
Yeah. And I can assume with multiple lines that does become tricky, right? Like I know within my organization, there's different people for different things to get the most direct result, right? And to be able to find those people, build an internal relationship with, to your point, if they're not really fostering that, that's going to make it difficult for sure. How does an independent, like, take us through the process of acquiring those lines? How does that relationship start?
Well, it's it all depends. Like a lot of what I have seen in the industry, and this dates back to when I was a sales manager for Sage Glass. We actually had independent reps across the country, so I was able to go out and identify, manage, and hire support independent reps. What I've seen is most independent reps have that one line that's a high volume sales in some way, that they've been known and they're given geography as that subject matter expert and the go-to person for it. And that company's allowing them to take the product line with some stability to ultimately become an independent rep. Now there's others. So I personally just made the jump because I was ready. I was 13 years into Sage Glass, and just for a lot of personal reasons decided this is what I wanted to do. And with that, I had kind of built whatever you want to say, a database of companies that I knew, one, had independent reps or would sell through independent reps, and two, narrowed into what I could add value to, meaning glass, glazing, things that I had a technical ability to help with.
Yeah.
And then it's just a lot of cold calling, a lot of networking, a lot of push. It takes time. It certainly took time, and it's evolving, so I'm in my 5th year, and I don't know. And I was going to tell you, so in 5 years, I've seen my line card be somewhat fluid in some of those categories, be it decorative glazing or windows, or skylight systems, whatever it is. I've got like 4 manufacturers that have been with me since the start.
Yeah.
Some of those, there's been some attrition because a couple companies went bankrupt. I got let go because one company decided they wanted to go the direct inside sales model. And
Tim, let me bookmark you there for a second, because there's something interesting in there I want to ask you about.
Yeah,
you had sage glass in the Minnesota territory where you are,
correct.
and then when you started TFIN Building Solutions, did you then have sage, or did you pick up a different dynamic glass?
I did bring sage. I was the sage rep at that time. The nice thing about the company with Sage Glass and Saint-Gobain, although it's a global company and a product offering, having 13 years and grown up in the company, there's inherent, knowledge, tribal knowledge, relationships, and it just was good for both of us to have.
So you went from a company rep with Sage to an independent rep with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so at the time when I was leaving Sage, I was in much more of a management role and on the commercial business development side of things than just specifically a territory rep in Minnesota. But that's where I cut my teeth. In 2007, 2007, I was the outside sales rep for Sage in this territory.
And do you still have Sage?
I don't. I recently switched to a company called Halio.
Okay, so
that's fabricated by Viroton. That's
more of the point that I'm interested in. Like, how does that fly? And you mentioned some other ones that might be fluid on your line card. Like, with your architects and your glazing contractor customers, like what's that experience like when you've been repping one company for so long and now you're repping in another one?
Well, it's delicate. And it's one that can't just be done spontaneously. It comes with a lot of thought and an understanding of the implications, both pro and con. In this case, it was a natural progression. This technology of electrochromic dynamic glass, it's been to market for some years, and as that has happened, other players have come in and evolved what can be with dynamic glass. Halio specifically has some advancements that the traditional manufacturers can't do, and it just felt like it was a natural progression to get there. And I have great things to say about the Sage product. It just made sense that now that there are additional things and value points of what I've learned the marketplace wants that this company has, but you can't now. Like in a scenario, John, where it's a side-by-side comparison, the worst thing I could ever do is negative sell, because I was so much a part of that product for so long.
Yeah.
And that I wouldn't do that. I think goes back to how we approach the audience as a consultant. I'm here to talk about the benefits of this product and where it might differentiate.
Yeah. It's knowing that your lines may be fluid must leave you in a position where it's even more important that you establish that you're the expert, you're the consultant on the product, and this is who can fulfill that now. This is the product that I have access to that answers that question.
Yeah, well, let me be clear. I mean, I don't want my product lines to be fluid, right? I want that established relationship. But, there's circumstance that always comes up. First of all, when I started my business, all the just because I wanted to have a decorative glass line didn't mean that Pulp Studio was going to take me on right away. Or so there's kind of that scalability of now that you've proven yourself, those manufacturers would work with you, and so, I mean, by brand, you want the lines and the manufacturers to stay consistent. In addition to that,
of course you would, like the extra work of having to change this and explain it to people, you obviously would not want to do that. That's just, I didn't mean to drill down on that. That's just kind of a interesting caveat, especially with the independent, I think, because like I see company reps that work 3 years here, 3 years here, 3 years here. Yeah. And as a glazing contractor or an architect, like when does the bullshit meter go off,
Oh, I absolutely agree. Back in the day when I was hiring sales reps, it's like you're looking at these resumes and it's 18 months here, it's 18 months there. And, you can get away with a couple changes early in your career because,
Sure.
you've got age and experience working against you, but eventually it becomes habit and you have
Yeah.
to start questioning that. And that's that's certainly where I'm like a creature of habit. So the last thing I want to do is get comfortable with something and then have to change it right away.
Sure. How much, you said Sage Glass in 2007. How much dynamic glass was getting sold in 2007?
Not much at all. They created the category. And
Yeah.
so I've told a lot of people this story, but when I interviewed there, they kept everybody I interviewed with, there was like 6 people. They all talked about this one job. And I was like, wow, this must be just massive, right? Well, so I didn't get any perspective of volume or capacity and so on. But what I realized was it was the only job they had sold, and it was less than 50 panes of glass. And they'd been working on it for 6 months, right? So
You got to start somewhere. Like
You do.
that off. You always look like a fool when you start something new.
right. And now, so the economies of scale certainly grew very quickly over the years, but yeah, it was a battle early on. And it still is with dynamic glass, just because, again, it's not for every building. And you got to kind of, as a sales rep and as an independent rep, it's to my best interest to understand if it's the right opportunity very, very early, because the last thing any of us want to do is exhaust our energy into something that's never going to happen.
So there's a good question there I wanted to ask you, and this might differ from company rep versus independent rep, but where is the sales rep's time spent getting the most value? What, like with which group? The glazing contractors, the general contractors, the architects? Where are you getting this value with your time?
So I look at it like this: the products that I represent, or we play in this glass and glazing industry as a manufacturer's rep, be it independent or direct, those products can't get in a building without the glazing contractor. So they are our customer, they are our lifeline, and they deserve all the attention that they need. Now, with some of these more value-added niche products like dynamic glass or, switchable glass technology, whatever it is, there's a promotional aspect to that, in that you've got to get out and educate the right people that this is a possibility. So when I started my company, I had this mindset of like 60% architectural, or kind of like that design decision mentality, right?
Yeah.
And I was thinking 30% channel, meaning installer, or with dynamic glass, you have some low voltage, but then 10% administration. Well, that was in 2018. COVID came and it flipped upside down.
Sure.
And in addition to that, John, what I've realized is that for some of the mainstay products like decorative handrail or window systems, the more commonplace products, more time needs to be dedicated to the installer, especially in today's environment, because they hold all the cards. We can work our asses off to get a specification that favors us, but in a tight, competitive bid market, they ultimately decide to buy out because there's not enough technical merit, meaning just because you can't powder coat this color isn't going to sway a job's decision one way or another.
Yeah, when the general contractor and the glazing contractor are working through pricing options and the general contractor can bring that information to the owner, those specifications can get thrown out pretty quickly.
Right. And so I sat in on a national sales meeting at the end of the year with one of my manufacturers, and they've got they've got what I consider the best group of reps out there. And they had asked a couple of the heavy hitters that sell the most for them to kind of give them what works for them. And the one gentleman started saying that gone is the architectural promotion, because when we can't get meetings, And when we do, it's offered to be a lunch and learn, and nobody in the room adds value, for all the reasons that we can pick at. But what he said really made sense in that of any contract that's out there buying today, who's got the biggest decision in that? It's the one that holds the contract, and that's the installer.
Yeah, I probably go back and forth a little bit. I probably go back and forth. You mentioned lunch and learns on those. I felt when I started in my territory that was a really good tool to get a large group, a lot of fish in one barrel.
Yes.
And then as I continued to give them, I'm not sure I got enough back from some of them.
Yep.
But there's definitely presentations I've given that I've begun a relationship with an architect that calls me on every project. So I mean, I wouldn't say gone is the architectural promotion, but I probably agree with you that the glazing contractor or the installer, the buyer, the one writing the PO, it's probably got to be the highest priority.
Absolutely.
Where do you think, or what do you think, whether we want to call it building materials sales, architectural sales, our role in the industry, what does it look like in 10 years?
Well, it's a loaded question, lot to think about there. Right?
Sure.
I think it's ever evolving, but 10 years from now, it's going to be so much more digital, right? With AI coming into play, with the ability to access information instantaneously. I look at it that people want to deal with people. Relationships matter. Human interaction is going to be there. I don't see it, and I have never really taken the approach that it's always the interaction has to be transaction based.
Yeah.
It's more of friendships. So I think I would expect it's going to be completely different in terms of how we access and give our information. But if you think about your career in and of itself, right? Like when you started out, you were getting lunch and learns, you realize that that wasn't you did it because you didn't know what you didn't know, right? And now we're at this post-COVID era where you're seeing a lot of, which I appreciate, is there's some of these younger guys in the industry that are using digital content to pump out a lot of technical, call it technical, maybe not. Yeah. But there's just a lot of good information out there, and I think it'll continue to evolve one way or another.
Yeah, I'd be a lot richer if I could predict the future, but AI is a box that's just been opened. We talk about it on the show, probably every episode. I should probably come up with like a little sound clip to play when I start talking about AI, but like the chatbot feature of being able to ask a question and get an answer, like that's something that I'm not sure how the human rep interacts with.
Right.
And then like, I don't know if you've seen some of these tools that architects can play with. I mean, they're entering input, right? Like you would in like a chat GPT, you have an input, and then I don't know, you could plug in your thermal requirements, your square footage, this kind of stuff. And I mean, there's programs that are designing buildings like for the architect, and I don't know how good or bad they are. I probably need to get someone on here to talk about it, but all these tools that we're just on the precipice of in 10 years, definitely different.
Well, there's going to be so much more content available at that point, right? And I mean, I'm laughing when you're talking about AI because this is how new it is to me. I've got a sticky note on my computer monitor that says, "Take course on AI, try to become subject matter expert." What does that even mean, right? And I look at it like, so are you going to use AI to write an email to a customer's response as a sales rep? Probably not. But you might.
Yeah.
You're probably going to have to. I think you're gonna see a lot of people start to rely on them, but they're not going to go that extra mile to actually proofread it to see if it's actually conveying the right message.
Yeah. We've had Adrian Lowenstein, maybe I talked to him about it. He does a lot of that educational content.
Yeah.
And we had him on the podcast, and I think that's who I talked to about this, but like that content creation, a lot of it's done by AI now. Like if you're scrolling Instagram Reels or TikTok or something, you'll find stuff that, example of one I found, I don't know if you know David Goggins.
I don't know that I do.
David Goggins is like this super motivational Navy I don't know, did Navy SEALs, are they always Navy SEALs just like Marines are always Marines?
Yeah.
Anyways, he's like this super motivational, yelling all the time. Who's going to carry the boats? He broke like the single day pull up record.
Okay.
He runs these like major marathons. Anyways, he's like, I guess his gig now is like motivational content on social media, podcasts, that kind of stuff. That's his space, right?
Yeah.
But I'm watching a video, and they've used his voice. It's not him speaking. They've used AI to clone his voice to make these motivational clips. So like tinfoil hat for like something that like, I don't know. I find that like when we're doing these podcasts, when we hit the like button on someone's post or we do the laughing emoji, we're kind of teaching the AI, right? Like every time we like something, the AI learns, oh, humans like that, right?
Yeah.
Is there a level of us doing that with our industry that the AI can replicate answers or design choices? That's tinfoil hat 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road. But like, I think we're just on the precipice of all that AI stuff. And I think it will. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask you a question? What do you think I don't even know if the value, like, where do you see a place for a sales rep 10 years from now in our specific roles, right? In the glass and glazing industry?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm on record. I don't know if I'm recorded. I probably am on one of these podcasts saying that I do not think I will be able to retire as an architectural sales rep. Now, that being said, let's say I stay with my company until retirement time. I think there will be space for people that are good.
Right.
I'm also definitely recorded on one of these podcasts saying that I don't think AI replaces people. I think people that use AI replace people that don't use AI. So this would be a case.
Fair statement. Understood.
This would be a case of you hopping on your course to become an expert matter on AI.
Yeah.
There will be tools, and maybe we don't have a chat bot that answers the architect's questions and then he just plugs it into an app and it's all just done by robots, right? Like,
yeah.
Maybe there's apps that we use that enables us to provide answers faster, reach a broader audience, provide more realistic lunch and learns. Tools that we'll use. The whole title of the position might change. You're going to be an educator. You're going to be an advisor. I guess there will be a level of sales that accompanies that, but like, I definitely don't think it's going to be driving an hour and a half to go, hand out your line card.
Right. There'll be more purpose-driven interaction.
Yeah, and
you don't have to.
That's going to look like.
You don't have to worry about retiring as a product rep. All you have to do is keep coaching for the next 15 years till your kid gets an MLB contract, right?
Oh man. Looking at a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old and anticipated an MLB contract. I think I saw it was something like, I don't know, there's some super high percentage of kids play Little League, and then it's like 30% play high school ball, and then it was like 8% play college ball, 1% plays D1, and it was like this like super small percentage.
Yeah.
People that make major leagues.
But it feels like it matters so much right now, right? Like we learn as we go on.
So that's an interesting topic. All right. So like, okay. I'm a coach that is trying to win, right?
Yes.
I'm not participation trophy guy, but I'm
Right.
also like fun for kids has to be super high.
Yeah.
I think particularly with baseball, right? Like I think you can get away with it with like flag football or basketball where it's like a little faster and a little more fun.
Yeah.
Baseball can be a boring ass game. And
I actually steer my boys away from it.
I have a cousin my age, and he was a college baseball player, and he's got boys that are a little older now, and they play lacrosse and football now, but they did play basketball. And I remember asking him, I said, "Why didn't you get the boys to play baseball?" He goes, "Dude, we tried it. It was so boring."
Yeah. So I have an older son that's 20, and he played all the little league. And I always tell people the best year of baseball that I ever got to watch was when it was machine pitch.
Yeah.
And that's because it would shoot a strike every time, and the kids
Yep.
would most likely strike out quickly. Anyway.
So that's what my boys have played. My older boy, I think, did 3 or 4 seasons of that, and he's now moving up to where kids will be walking everybody and throwing wild pitches.
Yeah.
And infielders will just be bored out of them. Outfielders, I'll be surprised if they can stay awake. But
Yeah.
go ahead.
Back to the youth coaching. So my kids are pretty active in hockey, football, basically whatever events out there. But hockey's a pretty big commitment for time, and it's more of a specialized sport, I would think. And it's fun to watch how serious some people take it versus others, right? But one of the coaches, I wanted to tell you this joke. So one of the coaches are great, and they do a great job with this youth team. But before every game, when I was dropping my kid off in the locker room, I would tell him all the time. I would say as I was leaving, I was like, "Well, good luck, coaches. All the talent's here. It's just going to boil down to coaching." And they didn't really know how to take that, right?
Yeah.
Until they got to know me and realized that a lot of what I say is meant for humor.
Well, that's where I was going, was like, so prioritizing fun, especially for the age group of kids that I have. I've got 5, 6, up to 11-year-olds. Like, not all of them chose baseball, right? Like, their parents signed them up for it, and they bring them here.
Yeah.
If it's boring, they're not going to like the sport. So here's a contrast, right? I have an assistant coach, and he's new to me. He's a new friend to me. He was he's a dad of a kid that we got on the older boys team, and I think he's great, and I'm super happy that I got him. But he's coming more from like the football coaching, right?
Yep.
And I think there's 2 things there. I think the football season is significantly shorter. I think it's more exciting, and I think those guys are a little harder, right?
Right.
And I like the hardness part that he's kind of brought to like my coaching game here. Like, the boys are running on and off the field, and I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
But like, where I prioritize fun is like we'll play like little mini games and stuff, which I don't think he likes.
Sure.
Because it's not like a drill, and it's not like but to get these boys to play, we start at practice beginning of February, and we're supposed to go to the end of April. Like, I got to make it fun for these kids.
Yeah, that's a huge time commitment at that age. And I guess I'm of the belief, kids should try multiple things at that age and not just get so specialized. I always say like, whatever sport or whatever activity you get involved with, whatever you start, you need to finish, right? You can't quit halfway in between. If it turns that it's becoming more of a chore for us as the parents to have to take them, then we'll reevaluate it next year,
Yeah.
But as a coach on the other side of that, at the end of the program, my goal in youth sports, specifically to football, is that each one of the kids had some individual milestone that they achieved. Maybe they made a tackle, maybe they, whatever it was, and that they leave the season wanting to play next year.
Yeah.
That's
that's
the
huge.
biggest thing.
I'd probably try to apply that more like actually micro is like I want them to leave practice wanting to come back to practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's tough with baseball, but like we've got so many boys in this organization, this local organization that are playing football, that are playing basketball, and I can see that that's like more fun for them.
Yep.
So to try and like keep boys playing baseball.
Yeah, but you're building a program, you're building building these little athletes' confidence, and good for you for doing that. And at the end of the day, we just need to be there to help, right? If you at this age, it's more about organization and how you talk, right? We've kind of said that before.
Yeah.
And being a positive role model is important.
Yeah, it's been a role that I've taken to. Obviously, I probably find a spot on every single one of these podcasts to jam in something about youth sports, but to think that these boys might remember you when they're an adult and you had a positive influence on their life, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it really is.
And we've tried putting our boys in other sports to middling success. They keep coming back to baseball, which I'm kind of fine with, but we've tried them in flag football. We've tried them in soccer. We tried them in jiu-jitsu. I'm
not a huge advice giver, but what I would say, in my experience with my older son, he played every sport, he tried every extracurricular activity. And looking back on it, I just think just enjoy the moment, right? Yeah. Enjoy in that moment, whether it's acting, karate, sports, whatever it is, it flies by fast, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm already seeing that. You said the machine pitch years.
Yeah.
My little one's still in that, but like now that I see like we're moving on and it gets a little more complicated and there's more parent politics, like those machine pitch years were golden.
Yeah.
They also look super cute when they're out there and they're like smaller than their bat.
They do, and it's fun to listen to the conversations they have with their teammates.
So we mic'd a couple kids up last season.
Oh, that had been hilarious.
Like, yeah, it's pretty good. I need to get some of that content out. I should probably share that on even like LinkedIn.
You should.
Tim, I'm going on close to an hour here with you. What, if any, are there any plugs you want to throw out there? Do you need to call out your lines? Are they going to be watching this saying like, Tim didn't shout us out?
Oh, I'm sure they are. Hey, if people don't know already what lines I'm representing, that's too bad. But it's all things glass and glazing here in the upper Midwest. Okay. We can get brand specific in Livers Bronze, Peerless Windows, Pulp Studio, AGS, W&W, Linnell, Dawson, Halio, Techfire. So I got like 9 core lines, right? But they're all vertically integrated into that selling to a contract channel or a glazing installer and promoted through kind of division need. My biggest plug is a couple things. One, thank you for having me on. I am a fan of your podcast. I got some windshield time here over the past year and started downloading your podcast because I recognize some of the names. And then what I was going to give you a compliment on, or would like to compliment you on, is kind of like this ever evolving industry, right? You're doing something that is somewhat untraditional to the glass and glazing industry. You've got a podcast, you put video on it, you pump a lot of great content, and you'll find your own success on the metrics that you have. But at the end of the day, kudos to you for doing it, because I know it's a time commitment. And good for you to try something different. I think that's kind of the message for the industry is do something, right? Don't expect like what you've always done. I always say what you've always done. If you always do what you always done, you always get what you've always got. So try something. Step out of your comfort zone.
Well, thank you. And I love that because, like I said earlier, the first podcast I did, I had no clue what I was doing. And I still make mistakes constantly, but the idea is that the more I've done it, and like, so we've done some content, and then we've stopped doing it, right? Like we didn't like it, or it wasn't catching on. But yeah, trying new things, and that can go for anyone, not just in our industry, anyone.
Right.
Try new things. The worst case scenario from this podcast, right, is that I've met a bunch of people in the industry, and my kids think it's cool that I have a podcast. So my 8-year-old, he did 3 episodes of a podcast, and to be honest, we were just too busy at the time to keep going. But he wants to get it going again. Like he thinks it's interesting. So,
well, as long as you archive this video content lives forever. So like the 10-year-old will pull up this interview when they're like 24, 26, making fun of dad, having a beer, and they're like, look at this guy back in the day.
Go into the AI though. I've got too much recorded audio that people can do. They can make AI with my voice. I'm curious, will you, with your windshield time, will you listen to your own podcast?
I don't think so. I don't know. I had done one other one, and I probably will, but in the same regard, I'm going to be like embarrassed through the whole thing.
I still am not comfortable listening to myself. I will usually put it on in the car, mostly to check the audio. Like, was the audio okay? When I'm editing it and I have it on the computer, it sounds one way. I want to know how it sounds in the car.
Yeah. But
I usually don't listen to more than like 5 or 10 minutes.
Well, anybody that's going to listen to, if this makes a full 56 minutes, we've got some good followers that'll listen the whole time, right?
Maybe. Yeah. This is on the longer side. We usually end somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour. So, well, I'll let you go, man. I'm surprised you had time with all the kids in sports, but thank you for joining us, and thanks for the conversation, man.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to get to know you a little bit better. So thank you. Have a good one, man.